You're standing in the scorching silence of the Judean desert, wind scraping dust across your skin like forgotten memories. Before you lies the entrance to a crumbling cave, half swallowed by time. Inside, buried beneath layers of ash and secrecy, is a scroll sealed with wax and strange symbols, not words meant for kings or conquerors, but truths hidden from civilization itself, forbiddens, not because they were false, but because they were too powerful. Asterisk, you break the seal. Your fingertips tremble. The script isn't just ancient, it feels alive. It speaks of luminous bodies, divine frequencies, the sacred anatomy of the soul, and a cosmic law more ancient than religion, untouched by empire. You realize this isn't just a document. It's a warning, a map, a mirror. Asterisk, but then why was it hidden? Asterisk, why would an entire sect, the Essenes, go into exile, renounce society, and devote their lives to preserving teachings meant to remain unread? Why live like ghosts in the wilderness, writing scrolls they dared not share? And more disturbingly, why did these teachings vanish completely from the official narrative of history? Asterisk, what did they see that others refused to? Asterisk, there's a reason their voices were silenced. It wasn't just politics or theology, it was fear, because what they preserved dismantled the foundations of control. It made the human being sovereign, free, unmanageable, and nothing threatens power more than that. But here's the paradox. Their attempts to hide the truth preserved it. So now, across centuries of silence, their whispers begin to reach you, not in sermons, but in questions that gnaw at your spirit. Asterisk, what if reality isn't what you've been told? Asterisk, what if holiness was never meant to be mediated by institutions? Asterisk, what if the deepest truths were hidden not to protect you from them, but to protect them from you? Asterisk, the scroll awaits. The cave has opened. Asterisk, but stepping inside won't just illuminate history. It might dismantle your entire sense of self. Asterisk, in the silence of that desert cave, something deeper than mystery stirs a disquiet that isn't just historical, it's existential. You begin to realize this isn't about a lost scroll or ancient sect. This is about you. About a fracture within human consciousness that the Essenes dared to name, and the world chose to forget. Asterisk, why would a group of mystics retreat from civilization to live in isolation, practicing rituals so precise they bordered on obsession? Why encode their knowledge in metaphors and bury it beneath rock? Were they simply ascetics, avoiding corruption, or were they protecting a truth the collective psyche wasn't ready to hold? Asterisk, Carl Jung might have called it the confrontation with the self-divine core within each individual that terrifies as much as it liberates. He warned that society trains us to wear masks, to suppress our depths, to fear our inner chaos. The Essenes, it seems, were among the few who embraced that chaos fully, ritualizing it, naming it, and transmuting it. Asterisk, but our modern world, like the ancient one, rejects such inner freedom. It prefers neat systems, stable hierarchies, and truths delivered through external authority. From childhood, we're taught to look outward for validation, meaning, even salvation. The Essenes flipped that entirely. They taught that the kingdom of God is within you, not as metaphor, but as a literal map to spiritual architecture encoded in the body and mind. Asterisk, Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "They muddy the waters to make them seem deep." But the Essenes didn't muddy anything. They offered clarity so sharp it cut through the illusions of empire and institution. And that's exactly why they became dangerous. They didn't seek power, they dissolved it. They didn't teach obedience, they taught remembrance. Asterisk, and here lies the hidden problem. Most of us do not want to remember, because remembrance implies responsibility. It means awakening from the comforting dream of victimhood, stepping away from the endless blame cycles that shaped modern life. It means owning your role in the architecture of your suffering and worse. It means realizing how much of your suffering has been chosen unconsciously. Asterisk, Arthur Schopenhauer argued that the world is my will and representation. The Essenes would agree. Their writings hint that external reality is a projection of internal alignment or misalignment. This flips the entire script of modern society. You are not just a product of culture, you are its creator. You are not being acted upon by forces. You are the force itself, misunderstood. Asterisk, and yet, look at today's world. Asterisk, we are flooded with information, yet starving for meaning. Hyperconnected, yet internally fragmented. We chase endless therapies, ideologies, and spiritual influences, yet the core anxiety remains. Asterisk, why? Asterisk, because the thing we're running from isn't out there. It's in the stillness the Essenes knew intimately. It's in the silence beneath thought, where no algorithm can reach and no institution can monetize. That inner sanctuary where the self waits. Asterisk, but reaching it requires a death of sorts, death of ego, of narrative, of certainty. The kind of death modernity avoids at all costs. So we distract, we consume, we scroll, we argue. Anything to avoid what the Essenes walked into willingly, the burning center of being. Asterisk, Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of bad faith, the lie we tell ourselves to escape freedom. The Essenes, in contrast, were radical truth-tellers, not to the world, but to their own inner cosmos. That's what made them subversive. That's what made them sacred. And that is what was hidden. Not because it was too complicated, but because it was too simple. Asterisk, not because it was weak, but because it was too powerful. Asterisk, so the teachings were buried. The dessert was chosen. The scrolls were sealed. Asterisk, and yet, across time and noise, their silence still speaks. If you listen, asterisk, but silence, if ignored long enough, becomes consequence. Asterisk, next. Let's explore what happens when this truth remains hidden and how its absence shapes everything around you. Asterisk, you may not remember the teachings, but the consequences of forgetting them are everywhere. Asterisk, they hide in plain sight in the tension you carry in your chest for reasons you can't explain, in the restlessness of your scrolling thumb, in the quiet dread that creeps in at night, whispering, something's missing. We've been told it's just modern stress, but what if it's something older, something ancestral, a spiritual hunger encoded in our DNA, crying out for the nourishment the Essenes once guarded. Asterisk, the truth is, the lost teachings didn't vanish, they fractured, and in their absence, we constructed a reality that mirrors our amnesia. Asterisk, we worship progress, but fear stillness. Asterisk, we glorify intelligence, yet drown in information. Asterisk, we seek connection, but abandon intimacy. Asterisk, modernity gave us power without wisdom ocean, without direction. And so we live in what Viktor Frankl might call an existential vacuum, a hollowing out of meaning beneath the surface of our abundance. Our calendars are full, our minds are busy, but our souls remain untouched. Asterisk, and here's the most haunting part, this is by design. The systems that shape your reality, education, religion, media, even healthcare, are not built to awaken your inner sovereignty. They are built to mold, to mediate, to manage, to prevent the very awakening the Essenes risked their lives to preserve. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's a psychological necessity for systems that rely on compliance. Asterisk, your disconnection is not a glitch in the matrix. It is the matrix. Asterisk, the brain, conditioned from childhood, adapts to survive in such a world. It prunes away the mystical, the ineffable, the intuitive. Neurologically speaking, it becomes uncomfortable to hold contradictions, to trust the unknown, to question the sacred scripts handed down by tradition. Asterisk. So instead of confronting this internal exile, we compensate. We over-identify with roles. The achiever, the rebel, the victim, the helper. We turn to consumerism to fill spiritual voids. We normalize burnout, calling it ambition. We wear anxiety like a badge of honor, all while the silent question hums beneath it all. Is this all there is? Asterisk, cognitive dissonance becomes our daily soundtrack. We know something is wrong, we feel it but can't quite name it. So we chase external solutions to an internal crisis. Medications, gurus, hacked morning routines. But the wound is not behavioral. It is ontological. It's about being, or more precisely, about not being. Asterisk, the Essenes warned of this in their veiled language, that when the divine architecture within is forgotten, the outer world becomes distorted. Shadow replaces substance. Dogma replaces direct experience. We become ghosts in our own lives, mistaking motion for aliveness. Asterisk, and yet, this isn't just philosophical, it's practical. Look at our culture. Addiction, isolation, tribalism, depression, rising suicide rates. These are not random phenomena. They are symptoms of spiritual displacement, of a forgotten inner temple now covered in dust. Asterisk, but what if this isn't the end of the story? Asterisk, what if the cracks we see in modern life aren't failures, but invitations? Asterisk, what if the very anxiety we feel is not a malfunction, but a sacred signal? Asterisk, because in the ruins of what no longer works, there lies the potential for a new way of being, a rebellion, a remembering. Asterisk, and that's where we go next, into the fire of transformation, where forgotten wisdom becomes living truth again. You've felt it, haven't you? That slow, rising friction between who you've become and who you were meant to be. A quiet insurrection stirring beneath the routines, deadlines, and identities. It whispers through your weariness and burns behind your eyes during sleepless nights. It says, there must be more. Asterisk, this is the beginning of rebellion, not against society, but against the internalization of its lies. A revolt not in anger, but in awakening. Asterisk, the Essenes didn't preach to crowds. They didn't build cathedrals. Their revolution was silent, private, radically personal. While empires expanded and temples crumbled, they turned inward, mapping a different kind of kingdom, one not ruled by priests or politics, but by presence. They were not hiding, they were preserving. They weren't afraid of the world. They were protecting something too luminous to be trampled by it. Asterisk. Their rebellion was the most subversive act of all, remembering the self in a world designed to forget it. Asterisk. You begin to understand, freedom does not arrive through permission. Liberation doesn't wait for societal approval. It starts with a dangerous shift in perception. The realization that you were never truly trapped, only trained. Trained to ignore your intuition. Trained to outsource truth. Asterisk. Trained to see yourself as small, separate, sinful. But what if every spiritual teacher who threatened the Audiyashwa, Lao Tzu, Rumi, even Buddha, was echoing the same unspoken law the Essenes encoded in their scrolls? That the divine is not something you find, but something you uncover. And the way back isn't upward, but inward. This rebellion begins when you reclaim the practices they once guarded: silence, fasting, breath, ritual, presence. These aren't religious relics, they are neurological rewirings, psychological revolutions. They retune you to frequencies buried beneath centuries of noise. Even your body, yes. The one you've been taught to critique or control is an instrument of revelation. The Essenes spoke of it as a temple of light, not metaphorically, but literally. Modern quantum biology now whispers the same, that consciousness may not arise from matter, but permeate it. To break free is not to escape the world, but to see it differently. Not to abandon society, but to engage with it through a deeper lens. One that remembers soul before role, essence before ego. It's in this lens that ancient teachings become relevant again, not as doctrines, but as tools, as doorways. And what does rebellion feel like? Not rage, not noise, but stillness. Stillness that no longer fears emptiness. Stillness that watches thought instead of drowning in it. Stillness that remembers, you are always more than this story. Yes, it will cost you. You'll lose your illusions, your comfort, maybe even your place in the social script. But what you gain? A sovereignty no one can give or take away. A compass not bought, but remembered. A return not to some utopia, but to yourself. The Essenes knew the price, and they paid it willingly. The question is, will you? There comes a moment quiet, inevitable, when the search ends. Not because you've found the final answer, but because you've realized something deeper. There was never a search at all, only forgetting, only dreaming, only the long and winding illusion that what you are lies somewhere else, sometime later, in someone else's truth. But the Essenes knew better. Their ultimate teaching wasn't hidden in scrolls, encoded in symbols, or buried in sand. It was simpler, more devastating, more liberating. You are the scroll. You are the temple. You are the teaching. They weren't preserving texts, they were preserving remembrance. The kind that dissolves the illusion of separation. The kind that reminds you the divine was never outside you. It is not a voice that speaks from heaven, but a silence that roars from within. They called it the way. Not a path to walk, but a frequency to become. A state of being so still, so present, so uncorrupted by the noise of identity and ego, that truth reveals itself without effort, without words. And in this remembering, something breaks open. You no longer chase meaning, you radiate it. You no longer seek love, you embody it. You no longer pray to something beyond you. Become the answer to the prayer. This was the forbidden knowledge. Not because it was heretical, but because it was unstoppable. A soul who knows they are divine cannot be controlled. A mind who remembers its power cannot be manipulated. A human who awakens to their wholeness becomes a threat not to others, but to every system built on the assumption that they are broken. This is the final paradox, the most sacred one of all. You were never lost, only convinced you were. And now, something ancient stirs in you again, not as a concept, but as a knowing, as a recognition beyond language. You are the cave, you are the scroll, you are the light they tried to bury, The Essenes did not fail. Asterisk, they planted a seed in time, in silence, in you. Asterisk, and now it begins to bloom.